Well, this might explain a few things. Let's begin. Oh, of course, when they're not filling their faces full of donuts or, I don't know, making an eco-idiot a cup of tea on a protest that they're actually meant to be dealing with, the police do actually have a very important job to do. I mean, they've got to keep us all safe, haven't they? And, solve all these little things that we all like to call crimes, instead of police and pronouns, which quite a lot of them seem to do, eh? Either way, though, you'd like to think, wouldn't you, that such a person with all this responsibility would have to go through several checks and several interviews to actually get a place to become a policeman or policewoman or whatever. And also, after corrupt police officers like Wayne Couzens come along, those checks and interviews would be carried out even more stringently. Well, according to this article, maybe not, because it says that nearly 18,000 cops, or police as we call them over here, have been hired without a single in-person interview, sparking massive safety fears, which, that is just unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, what they do, just go along the road and go, do you want to be a policeman? In my opinion, it's not really much better than that, because it says that forces have carried on hiring over Zoom long after COVID restrictions were lifted. And yes, I know about 3 or 4 years ago, let's face it, the government kind of locked us in for a code, didn't they? But that was quite a scary time when it first was leaking out and there was all fear all over the place, it seemed. So I suppose you could have understood then slightly. However, we've moved on from that, haven't we? We are no longer under these restrictions. 2 years now that we're basically free of them, apart from the occasional lunatic you see walking about in a mask in broad daylight in the middle of the street, eh? And whilst admittedly that is better than no interview at all, that it doesn't substitute an in-person one where you can actually get a real assessment of someone, in my opinion anyway, that is. Especially, of course, if for whatever reasons the person's webcam weren't working and they just had to rely on their voice, thereby surely not being able to tell a person's body language. But it also says that bombshell stats reveal that 17,750 PCs and PCSOs in England and Wales were hired over Zoom in the past 4 years, and the numbers revealed by FOI requests, or Freedom of Information requests, and seen by the Sun on Sunday come after a damning, Angeloni I think that says, inquiry exposed serious failures in the vetting of police officers. The probe was apparently set up after the gun cop Wayne Couzens kidnapped, raped and murdered Sarah Everard, who was 33, as she walked home, and presumably, like all of us, they wouldn't want any such thing happening again, so what are they bloody playing at? Former Detective Superintendent Shabnam Chaudhry, I hope I pronounced that right, said it was absolutely shocking, and she said we are potentially looking at another Wayne Couzens or a David Carrick, because let's face it, it just seems, doesn't it, that after the government said they wanted 20,000 police officers on the street, that any checks would possibly water down. I mean, I hope that is not the case, but it does make me wonder if any such checks were in their whole recruitment drive, especially if they are continuing to be quite lazy, in my opinion, and resorting to these basically over the internet interviews. But she continues and says that officers that are rapists, abusers or criminals who have got into policing through a process that, in my view, which is recruitment by shortcut, is really lazy policing on the cheap. And Labour MP Diana Johnson, chairwoman apparently of the Home Affairs Select Committee, said that the revelations were very concerning. Well, thank you very much for that, Diana, and I hope they'll now turn all that around, because let's face it, it really does need to be, eh? But get this, listen to this. It says that virtual assessment processes were introduced as a temporary measure by police at the start of the pandemic. That word there, temporary, it just seems like they never understand what that means, eh? They were originally apparently extended until March the 31st, 2022, but for some reason they were carried on in many forces and until at least the summer of 2023. I mean, that's over a year ahead, isn't it? It just makes me wonder what any such excuses there would have been. Perhaps, obviously I could be wrong here, but it makes me wonder if they wanted to, I don't know, have a police interview whilst potentially solving a crime in the background, or even worse, watching Netflix, eh? Either way though, surely I'm guessing they probably weren't given as much attention as an in-person interview would have had. And also, would there have been more people in that in-person interview at one end of the desk compared to actually on the call? A government spokesperson, though, they said, we expect police forces to ensure that they are meeting all candidates face-to-face when hiring new officers, as per the College of Policing guidance. And all forces, though, are now using apparently face-to-face assessment activity in addition to an online assessment process. And progress has been and continues to be made to strengthen the way that officers are vetted, scrutinised and managed and disciplined to rid the force of anyone not fit to serve and stop them from getting into the police in the first place. Well, that is all well and good to hear, but it just makes me wonder over those 4 years how many other Wayne Couzens or David Carricks have actually slipped through the net. And let's face it, until they slip up, they unfortunately could be committing who knows what crimes themselves, eh? Quite worryingly though, some 28 police forces in England and Wales responded saying that they carried out online-only interviews, but 13 forces could not even provide figures, meaning that the number of cops or police, as I said, recruited over Zoom only could be higher. But don't worry though, because most apparently are doing back-in-person interviews now. But some forces like Cumbria said they are still recruiting online-only. Well, that really does need to get put a stop to. The government really should put their foot down on this, and fast, because let's face it, this could be a massive problem waiting to happen, couldn't it? But also, if a nasty person does something unthinkable and horrible like, nick my Snickers bar, I want to make sure a proper policeman is dealing with it, eh?